Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, the recording is live. So, Paul, thanks for joining us on the MedTech Leaders podcast, where we speak to founders and leaders like yourself who obviously got an interesting journey and where you can maybe share some of your insights with our audience. So, yeah, firstly, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here and sort of help out the community to sort of avoid my mistakes.
Yeah, sure. Might be useful then to just start on a little bit about your background, if you don't mind.
No problem. I'm a mechanical engineer by background. I graduated in Poland in 2006 from two degrees. One is machine building and the other one was automation and robotics. So I'm definitely sort of a process-oriented, product development oriented person. And that's what Aseptium was founded on, the principle of we know there are many problems and we have the capability of designing, developing new solutions that take you one step further.
Sure. So you graduated in 2006. When did you found Aseptium then?
So that was a bit of a journey because I first started with one of the top companies in our sector. I was running research and development department for this company for several years. And then in 2013, I embarked on a full-time MBA course to sort of up my game because till then I was basically just designing components and machines, and I realized that I wanted a little bit more insight into how the sort of business side of things work, and Aseptium was a side effect of this move, because I realized after completing this degree that the only way for me to sort of implement the innovations I had in my head was to actually set up my own company and go with that.
Sure, yeah, because I guess I was going to ask you, like, what kind of led you to wanting to go down the entrepreneurship kind of route?
So first of all, as an engineer, I really got into the decontamination sciences world because it brings together so many disciplines of science and you are constantly on a steep learning curve. So I found this really fascinating, that you can learn new things from different corners of this world every day. And then if you can actually add a sprinkle of your talent to come up with solutions that solve the pressing problems of the industry, then you have a formula that requires an outlet, and Aseptium became that outlet in 2014 when the company was founded. I was previously running a little consultancy, and that transformed into Aseptium when I wanted to sort of do it at a slightly larger scale.
Sure. Might be useful just for the audience to understand a little bit more about Aseptium in terms of kind of...
So Aseptium is a big extension of my sort of initial consulting work, because after I graduated from the MBA course, I started working with a number of companies in our sector, improving their equipment, helping up with processes. And that also led me to an understanding that the only way I can actually implement my own ideas in full was to set up my own company. So Aseptium was founded to develop innovations in the space of decontamination sciences. I specialize in cleaning processes of surgical instruments, with focus on the most complex surgical instruments that we have in the industry, the likes of flexible endoscopes or robotic arms. And understanding that without proper cleaning, all the following steps of disinfection and sterilization may not be successful. So cleaning became this sort of pinnacle of a challenge that we needed to cross that chasm to make sure that all the processes end up with safe to handle and safe to operate with surgical instruments, and same goes to laboratory equipment. So in essence, we specialize in cleaning systems from the machines that perform it in an automated way through processes that take part and are developed for particular equipment or particular conditions around the world. And lastly, that includes chemicals that are a vital part of this process.
Sure. Really interesting. And what sort of companies do you tend to work with generally?
So the decontamination of medical devices is a huge sector, because if you can imagine, every single hospital on the planet has to provide safe to use reusable surgical instruments. But unsurprisingly, maybe the number of global players is fairly limited. So there's maybe 20 big companies that dominate this space, and there are the likes of us who come with new ideas, new products. So we've worked with I think all main players in the industry that, for example, produce cleaning equipment like washers, washer disinfectors, ultrasonic washers, and similarly, we've also worked with companies that make cleaning chemistries for those machines, also widely distributed around the world. So we have touched all aspects of the industry.
Interesting. I guess from like a medical device perspective, have you got any advice, I guess, for people that are developing medical devices in terms of what they should do, in terms of taking the consideration around decontamination, what they should be doing, when they should be thinking about it?
This is an excellent question, because if you have in mind a reusable medical device, it needs to be somehow cleaned, disinfected, or sterilized in between procedures. So the sooner you take into account that this process has to happen to your device every time it's used, the sooner you realize that the design input actually brings you to the very beginning of your product development, because you have to consider materials that you are building your equipment of. It touches on the geometry and the physical aspects of that device that make it either easy to reprocess, easy to clean and sterilize, or almost impossible. And when you get to an end of your development process, you have a almost market-ready solution, and you then realize that it was actually designed in such a way that it's not going to be able to be compatible with your hospital decontamination processes. It's almost going to square one to look at the choice of materials, to look at specific features of those instruments or equipment that make it very difficult to maintain clean and in the state of being disinfected or sterile.
Interesting. Yeah. So, like you said, that it will actually have an impact on the materials and the way you actually design your product, right?
So when you have your sort of first round of design inputs to make your to create the sort of proof of concept, I think that's the time when decontamination should be added to a list, just to cross out the obvious pitfalls that will haunt you the longer you keep delaying considering them.
Like, from your kind of experience, what kind of impacts have you seen of, let's say, a scenario of someone who doesn't take into consideration the materials they're putting in and they build their device, and what kind of things can happen?
On several occasions, I dealt with automated pieces of surgical equipment that were already designed in the phase of clinical testing, perhaps. And then we are being asked, oh, can you please develop a process that is going to be validated for cleaning? And then you realize that there are several components like blind holes or crevices in the device that just harbor contamination just by the nature of the physical design of the product. And that's a moment where someone has to realize that we either have to have a super extensive over-the-top cleaning process to clean those few elements that could have been designed out right at the beginning, and they were not an integral part of the functionality or the idea for the device, but they were just an aftermath of maybe choosing certain production technologies over the others. So designing out those obvious pitfalls, creating surfaces that overshadow themselves. So when you have a cleaning system that wants to penetrate to the inside of those features, those geometrical features, you by design create an obstacle that the system have to overcome. I'm not saying they are not cleanable. I'm just saying that the process will have to be most probably adapted to suit this particular piece of equipment. And if you can imagine, if you have thousands of surgical instruments going through a regular decontamination department in a hospital, and most of them go through several standardized processes, if you have one that can't go through that, it becomes a huge problem because it can put a stop to the entire operation.
Interesting. I guess, like, Paul, let's say we've got a medical device founder in the process. They want to start developing their product. Like, at a really top level, what kind of blueprint do you think you'd give to them in terms of what they need to consider, who they need to engage with, what they need to start doing to, I guess, avoid some of these things happening?
First of all, engaging with end users. So on this, in this case, obviously, if we're talking about surgical tools, those will be specialized surgeons. But at the same time, ask them if the decontamination department that they use could have a look at the device and just compare it to other instruments that may be of similar complexity, and then start looking at potentially doing some early cleaning testing, validated cleaning testing that would allow them to just brush off that problem right from the beginning, rather than, I'll say, come back to it after it's found out that there is a major issue. And I've seen cases where instruments were rejected by hospitals just on that basis, that there was no reliable process for cleaning of a particular device provided in instructions for use. So this is something that needs to be considered right at the beginning of the journey.
Really interesting. I guess, like, moving a little bit towards, I guess, with the experience that you've had, when you were running a consulting business, then kind of that evolved into Aseptium, and you've been in this space for a decent length of time. The reality is that lots of medical device companies do fail. If you look at the success rates, they're not that they're not that pleasing. From your experience, have you noticed any trends as to why that tends to happen? Could you put your finger on a few things?
So it's also like with Aseptium's products, because we went through the journey of putting products on the market ourselves, and we see that regulation is actually one of these famous now elements that can complicate implementation of an innovation on the market, even though you can meet your sort of local regulations and work with your local hospitals. The moment you want to put a product on the market slightly further afield, whether it's even in a different trust of the NHS or going abroad, you find out that their interpretations of even the same ISO standards may be slightly different. And then the further around the world you look, there are huge differences in the way that application of standards actually happens, and it's best to work with people internationally to again get the insight and be one step ahead of this when possible, rather than being one step behind. So I'm lucky enough to work with a huge number of professionals and experts from different countries that I can rely on when it comes to asking questions for how would you sort of look into implementing this product in your particular environment. Because if you look at those major differences in the approach to just decontamination of surgical instruments, you'll find out that sometimes those differences are absolutely critical to the way you design and implement a product. So for that reason, I would say talking to people from those different environments that you are thinking of going to is, do it before you go there.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess understandably, and it's good that the medical device space is heavily regulated. That's what you'd expect. But I guess ultimately, I guess what you're saying is it places challenges on medical device companies to, I guess, ensure that everything they are doing is complying with those regulations. Is that kind of what you're saying?
The fact that the regulation is there is great. It's just we are finding that in many cases we have another layer of sort of local regulations that are taking certain parts of the regulations very seriously while almost dismissing others. So for that reason, the fact that, for example, you went through the entire MDR and you look through the requirements that it puts on a medical device, for example, for European Union, then you start thinking of, how about we look at that in the context of certain Asian countries. You may find out that there is a different approach to this. So just yesterday, I was talking to a couple of colleagues in Asia, and they were asking me, okay, so your products are, for example, following the international ISO standard when it comes to regulating the amount of contamination that can be left on the instruments after the process. And you have the ISO standards that clearly defines this. For example, when you have the presence or remaining presence of proteins or other indicators that the cleaning process didn't work completely. And then in different places around the world, that number changes. So that limit changes. And then something that may work in one country is not a guaranteed success in other countries, just because they have different maybe local regulations, or they take a different stance on a particular approach.
Sure. Really interesting. And I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that you had your own kind of journey at Aseptium in terms of developing products, and you learned quite a bit there. We obviously touched on the piece around decontamination, around regulatory as well, around local regulations. Is there anything else that you've kind of learned through, I guess, going through that process of developing products to make that process, I guess, better in terms of whether it's saving time, saving money, just getting to a better end solution? Is there anything else you've learned?
One thing but this is very specific to the type of products that we are making. But one thing that I've learned, going through an MBA, every time we were talking about securing your position on the market, everyone was talking about, oh, you have to make sure that you have patents for everything. And then that's how we started with Aseptium. We applied for patents for our solutions, but then you realize that you actually start adapting your product so quickly that, especially if you are just a small company like we are, it sort of doesn't make sense to very heavily safeguard the design with patents, because you'll find out that half a year along the road, you're going to change a couple of things for better. From the sort of user experience design perspective, they will be better, but they will not be fully covered by the initial patent that you have done. I'm not saying not to patent. I'm just saying to have an open mind how you approach it, and perhaps talk to a good patent attorney to find the best way to protect the IP of your product, rather than just assume that once you have a patent, you are safe, because that did not really pay out for us at all. Apart from creating a huge bill every year, it didn't really materialize because, as I say, we were moving so quickly and changing things rapidly that the product was evolving quicker than its protection. So that's one thing to consider. Definitely working with a good patent attorney to design a strategy for protecting maybe not the entire concept, but just certain features of it. But as I say, it's the job of a good patent attorney to point out those possible avenues to look at that. One thing that we have also implemented from the early days of the company, I was looking at the most flexible manufacturing methods, allowing you to change the product almost as you are producing it. So instead of making huge investments in bespoke tooling, look at manufacturing methods that are allowing you to make changes in relatively inexpensive way. This is mostly because, especially in the very early days, you always find things to improve very quickly, and the fact that you have to change expensive tooling can drain your bank account very quickly. So we have been looking at how we can design to make the manufacturing processes very flexible and work around those. So always having the manufacturing method in mind when you design a particular component or a part, so you know that you have flexibility and you are not just bound to one single manufacturing method.
Yeah, really interesting.
That's a more technical aspect of it, but having flexibility is a huge advantage.
Yeah. Does that also help with the part we were speaking about earlier, with the fact that you've got like local regulatory requirements, and if you have more flexible manufacturing, do you feel that you can react better to those situations as well?
Absolutely. Agility in general is super important. The fact that you can, to a certain extent, maybe adapt a product on the go almost, make it more suitable to meet requirements of your customer here or there, is hugely valuable.
Yeah, I guess it's probably I guess a lot of founders would probably think that, okay, what's the return on investment here? Because perhaps is it a case where you might have to perhaps invest a little bit more initially to have those flexible methods, but then in the longer term, you probably
I would say that is mostly down to your design principles, how you design, because you can design every single part in several different ways, but thinking about how it's actually going to be physically manufactured. When you understand the manufacturing methods, and my background was paramount in this case, because I understood what it takes for different types of materials and different types of geometries to be created. And based on that, I was designing in such a way that I had that flexibility built into the design.
But then that is tractor is just doing maze drilling.
The other point I guess probably touch on is that we've kind of touched on already, where let's be honest, like running a medical device company is expensive. It can be like a heavy kind of a heavy burn rate, and I think there's a big risk where you could find yourselves in a short period of time just running out of the resource to do what you need to do. Have you got any kind of, I don't know whether it's through your own personal experience of where you feel people perhaps overinvest and how they can perhaps keep that burn rate? I know it's going to be product specific, but any kind of general principles you've learned to kind of minimize that burn rate and give yourself the best chance?
When the major cost element of your product development is actually design, testing, and manufacturing at the beginning, if you can find partners that will help you to become the part of this journey is actually excellent, because it's not a given that you'll be able to make every single element of your idea yourself. If you can, that's brilliant, but if not, then find partners that will be able to work with you, give you that piece of advice to say, okay, with the machinery, for example, we could do this, and that would allow you to be more flexible in the future, provided you design it in a specific way. So, having a wide network of experts, whatever sort of component types you are manufacturing or thinking of, having options and having flexibility is critical. And one thing that from experience I can say was one of the more difficult ones is to almost have the safety net of having more than one or two suppliers of components that are of a critical nature to the products. Obviously, if you start like we did with implementing the ISO 13485, your quality management system sort of drives you to do that. But very often I speak to people who are considering sort of implementing ISO right at the end of the development journey, and that's how you miss those critical steps, because there were a number of times when even after using particular supplier for some time, you out of sudden receive a component or a batch of components that are of really poor quality, and to rectify that, you find out that they changed either a person who was doing that or a piece of machinery, and it's not going to be an immediate thing for them to sort it out. So having someone else that will be able to jump in with a proven track record is a good safety net to have.
Sure. And something you said just about like having partners, it just reminded me, and I want to get your perspective on this, that I was speaking to a founder of the medical device space, and he said he initially had 100% equity in his company, and he now has about, I don't know, something like 15%. And he kind of says that he feels in this space, I think, to really achieve and to really give yourself the best possible chance of success, you need to involve as the right people. It's just too much to do by yourself. Like, what's your view on that? Do you think that's an important thing?
I agree on that. That we've also went through the same process of me starting with the full ownership and then bringing people on board, and we even ran a crowdfunding campaign to finance us moving to Scotland and establishing our R&D laboratory there. So definitely having people on board who are somehow invested in, whether those are people who advise on the business development, or as in our case, people who we work with on a daily basis, like distributors, and working with them from the very beginning. They are a part of the product development journey because they have their input, and they know that at the end they are going to get exactly what what they need, rather than you just trying to convince everyone around the world that your product is best.
Yeah. Really interesting. I guess as well, like I wanted to get your view on like the commercialization of the product, because I think there's like a big thing where you can kind of go into all the kind of technical aspects of being passionate about a product, building a product, but you still need to look to commercialize it. And speaking to founders in the space, it seems like an absolute minefield, because you've got to think about, okay, the end user, the hospital, the distributor, there's so many pieces in this chain, and it has to kind of work for each party. How have you kind of found that process? Have you got any bits of kind of advice on to kind of navigate that journey?
Yeah, it's the same piece of advice to have people wherever you are thinking of going with your product, have people there that know you, trust you. Build the relationship built on trust is something that is super valuable, because you then understand that when you get a feedback on your product, it's something to make your product better, rather than something that is just going to make your product more like your competitor, if there is any. So again, working with the industry partners, and also leaders in the industry. So, for example, in decontamination sciences, we have a number of international events pretty much every year that bring together the community to discuss the most pressing problems in the industry, to compare ideas and come up with better solutions. So collaboration in general is a great way to achieve a better rate of success, let's put it this way.
Sure. I know you mentioned as well about the crowdfunding kind of journey. I guess we speak to medical device companies who kind of say that they've got quite a good idea, they want to kind of implement it, but they're just struggling with the funding journey. It's quite, I guess, a general kind of question. I know it depends on the quality of your product, but is there anything you've learned on that funding journey that you feel that could be applied to other people to give themselves the best possible chance of accessing it?
Yes, for us, the crowdfunding journey was great, because you're almost creating a marketing campaign of your products at the same time, because you're just going to do the open market. It's not a conversation that you have with maybe 5-10 people behind the closed doors, and if all of them say no, then that stops there. If you put out a campaign and you start showing what you are doing, and start gathering people who believe in you and your products, that's one way of looking at it. But at the same time, for medical devices, it's tricky, because not everyone is going to be saying, okay, I believe in a particular solution that is going to clean certain types of medical instruments, because that may not be interesting to everyone. But if you cast your net wide, there's a much bigger, much higher probability that you are going to attract the right people.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense.
So funny story for us was that one of the person we started collaborating with right from the outset of Aseptium, and is still a big part of how the company goes forward, was a person that found us actually through that crowdfunding campaign, and we started collaborating from there.
Yeah, really interesting. I didn't think of it in that kind of way, actually, that you're kind of almost sticking to two birds with one stone, right? You're building the marketing of your product, but also accessing the funding to grow it further. So in terms of then, I guess a lot of people try and go to maybe like a, I don't know, venture capitalist, etc. If you kind of compare that, do you feel like the crowdfunding journey's had a lot more benefits, would you say?
It worked for us. But there are certain types of products that will benefit from going through the sort of angel investors and then maybe venture capital route. It just depends more on the product and the type of outreach you are looking for.
Sure. The other thing I just wanted to ask you as well is that you've mentioned, we've discussed a bit about having relationships, having partners within spaces that can help advise you. How important is it to have the expertise internally, if that makes sense, or have it within your team, like as well as that?
It is absolutely critical to have an expertise. Let's put it this way. If you understand enough about the problem that you are solving to know that you require an expert in, let's say, the 20% of it to make the whole thing complete, that's the best situation. So you have to understand enough of the entire picture of what you are trying to make to know exactly who is going to be instrumental to finish this off, what sort of advice you need, whether it's a purely technical aspect of the design or whether this is more sort of a business oriented, how you go into a different country, how you start collaborating with others. So the general understanding of the principles of the industry itself, the product development process, this allows us, for example, to do almost everything in-house, but we very well understand what elements we are not capable of doing in-house and we have to outsource. But then we are 100% sure that we then go to the right people, rather than doing a guesswork, of doing something in-house and then trying to outsource it and then trying to sort of balance out which works better. When you understand your product and your processes well, you'll be able to quickly figure out where you need assistance.
Sure.
And one great piece of advice here is don't be afraid of asking for advice, because very often people who know a lot more than you do on a particular subject, they'll be happy to share that element with you, just for the sake of something happening, rather than stalling at this stage of a very early concept or a prototype.
Sure. I guess that kind of leads me on to as well. There's one thing knowing that, okay, you need these partners and you need to have internal expertise as well. How do you let's say a startup, let's be honest. People can feel, if I'm going to join a startup, things can be a bit risky. Working in a startup is a lot of hard work as well. How do you, from your experience, how are you incentivized to keep people on board with that journey? Like, that's more from a kind of mental perspective.
The right people is the critical element here, because even when you look in the engineering world, let's imagine you want to find a design engineer, and within the pool of design engineers you'll find people who like, for example, designing components of a certain part, and they, after a number of years in the industry, this or the other, they become experts in just making, for the sake of experiment, little tiny gear wheels, and they are just absolutely best in the world in doing those, and they can design variants of those super quickly. But then you find out that you then ask that person, what will happen if you expose this to a particular range of chemicals? Then it stops. So what I'm saying here, you have to find the right type of people for your company. And in my case, because decontamination sciences come with so many unanswered questions, there's a huge element or a huge amount of this sort of basic research that you have to conduct to even start something or start thinking of a new idea. And that for some is an incentive in itself, because they will be learning something completely new, maybe going into uncharted waters, just trying to figure out how something works, because nobody else did that in this specific context before. So when you find people who are passionate about what you do, it's a lot easier, because they will understand that there are questions to be asked. They will understand that there are areas of knowledge that they will have to learn. And I personally find immense pleasure in learning new things. And my colleagues at Aseptium are exactly the same. But I chose those people because of that particular ability. So that's what I'm saying. I would rather choose someone who is willing to learn for Aseptium rather than someone who is an expert in a very narrow field, because I know that that person is going to be great for one thing, but if we want to go the next step, that may not be the right person for the company. Okay, we are super small because there are only three of us, but all three of us are super open-minded. They are happy to learn different disciplines, try to understand how all of it, those different perspectives, how they come together to come up with the best possible solution.
Yeah. So just to clarify, when you say right person in this context, are you saying people that are happy to work on things even when things don't seem clear, grey areas? So
Absolutely,
essentially, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
In our case, this is absolutely essential.
Yeah, okay. Whereas someone maybe, let's say you could have a highly skilled engineer in maybe a large company, but if things are, they might work in a very narrow kind of field and they're very clear on exactly what they need to do.
Yeah,
If we just take that example, they perhaps might not be as suited to a startup where things are very kind of
that's
vague
right.
and unknown. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of like, I should have probably asked this question a bit earlier about the commercialization part, but I guess other things kind of come into play, right, Paul, about pricing and kind of knowing how to actually make things work from a business sense. Have you got like any perspective on how to ensure that what you're doing commercially kind of will make sense as well, like as you're going along that journey? Because there's a big risk, right? You could develop the right product, right people and everything, but actually by the end of it, commercially it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And then what
Yeah.
do you do? So how do you ensure that you
I'm on a steep learning curve in on this aspect myself, because we have attempted to create a product that scientifically and from the engineering point of view gets right to the top of the requirements, gives you the most clinically relevant answers to the problems that you may have with cleaning, but that comes as you say, at a cost. And we found that the only way to bring on board people is to do it through education. This is, again, a lengthy and very expensive way to do it. But this way, you then gain customers that stay with you because they believe in your product, not because they found your product to be cheapest. Our products are definitely not cheapest, but I think that they are best in what they were meant to do. And if you can convey that message to your distributors and end users, they believe in it and they go to their customers with this belief. And on that basis, we build our relationships.
Yeah, okay. Fine. So I guess you're kind of saying your kind of tool is just, I guess, selling the benefits, right? As long as you can explain the benefits and take those. And
explaining the value of what it gives you, because something may look more expensive on paper, but if you then sort of see how much value it's actually giving you, that you can actually save money by using this product in 4 other areas, that then starts sort of creating a picture that you can believe in.
Yeah, sure.
Because, but every day we are still faced with the same question when people are asking us, "Oh, you have your product. I know it's great, but I can get something like this, 3 times cheaper." And then you sort of think, yeah, you definitely can. There are products that claim to do similar job, but they don't offer you the value that our product offers you.
I guess like that's always a challenge, I think, in any kind of business, trying to change behaviors, right? If people are used to something as well, then if you're trying to communicate something else, I think that's it's not a 2-minute job, is it? You have to keep going with it. I guess what's your kind of plans with Aseptium, if you don't mind sharing, over like kind of short to medium term going forward?
So at the moment, we are continue our journey with putting new products, new innovations, and a lot of ideas come from industry meetings with conferences where you hear someone talking about a specific problem they might have, and then another problem someone else sorted in another industry, and then you sort of think, if I had a product that combined a little bit of that with a little bit of that, maybe I have a solution for a problem C that exists, for example, in hospitals, and that's how it happens. So we evolve through collaborations. We work very closely with University of Highlands and Islands on campus in Inverness. We work with Heriot Watt. Now I'm also strengthening ties with the University of Science and Technology, AGH in Krakow. And again, there is a network. There is a network of people around the world, experts in particular elements of the field, and they come up with their own ideas. They come to us saying, could we make something like this or that? And that's when we start a conversation to move forward. That's from the sort of technology perspective. On the business perspective, we really enjoy working with our new distributors around the world, because we are getting exposure to sort of new challenges, new problems that are simply created by different, as I mentioned at the beginning, interpretation of standards, and we are still trying to make sure that we can help them ensure compliance. So that works really well. But on the business side, I think, we are growing organically at the moment, but I would very happily consider a bigger sort of partnership with a bigger company that would be open-minded to having someone like us in their midst that is going to challenge the status quo and continuously evolve, make products and ideas better.
Look, I think the work you're doing is great, and look, like first time we kind of spoke, and the event that you kind of highlighted to me, it really made my eyes really open wide in terms of how an important topic this is. To be honest, I didn't realise that decontamination could be such a critical factor for medical device companies, and it definitely is. And I guess there's probably still that education that needs to happen more around that as well.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
Medical device companies to realize that. So no, it's really interesting, the stuff you're doing, and hope it keeps progressing well. I guess the last thing I'll probably leave you with is there any last bits of advice that you want to share for people that are still on that journey of building their medical device and still trying to go on that journey? And it's look, it's not an easy journey, it's a painful journey and a long journey. But is there anything you'd want to say to people that are still kind of going with it? It's a very general kind of question, but anything else you want to maybe say?
One thing that I found on my journey, that it was always beneficial to know as many people from your industry as possible, whether they are just experts in a field or competitors. Just knowing them, understanding them, trying to find out how you can be better with collaborating with them and making things work. So I use every opportunity I have to meet with people who are working in the industry that we are in, but also industries that are somehow connected, because very often you can transplant ideas and technologies from one industry to another, but if you don't know about them, you won't be able to do it. So yeah, talk to people as much as you can.
I think that's a great.
Mostly, when you talk to them, listen rather than talk, because they will probably know what you can do, but you probably won't know how can they help you and what you can do with them, and they'll very likely tell you.
No, look, I really appreciate that, Pavel. That's probably a good note to maybe finish the podcast on as well, because I feel like in this chat with you, a lot of it's actually been highlighting the importance of just kind of building relationships and connections with people, because I kind of felt as well from personal experience that the people that are quite insular, so in terms of like, I have a vision, I know, and I want to execute this. Yes, that's great from a drive perspective, but there's probably going to be things that you definitely don't know, because no one knows everything, right? And you're going to run into things as problems eventually by not having spoken and been open-minded. So I think it's having that kind of balance, isn't it, of like kind of executing your vision, but then having that open mind to, I guess, take suggestions and take views of others, which I guess is ultimately quite important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But look, I really appreciate your time. I think you've been really insightful and really open. So thanks so much. And yeah, like hopefully catch up soon.
Thank you so much. I hope it's going to be a helpful episode for those who are thinking of going forward with their ideas.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.